but as we go into the formal part of the webinar, everyone should jump on mute, and we'll just let Jo do her introduction. A few more people coming in. Okay, so we're happy to get started. Jo, you're ready to go? SIA team, everyone's happy? Okay, so I'd just like to welcome everybody to our SIA Safety Project webinar. It is essentially our official launch to SIA members, but we've invited a broader industry because this is a very much an industry program, and we're very excited about this program. Before I get started, actually, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from Gadigal country, and I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And I think collaboration, working together, and the culture of our industry is a really great place to start when it comes to introducing this project and introducing the way that SIA wants this project to feel. I'd like to send out thanks to AMSA and FIDC, who are the funders of this project, equal funders of the project. I think their acknowledgement of the cultural change that industry is best to lead is really important here. And so acknowledging that and supporting that is super important for us as a national peak body and as an industry. I wanted just to make the point that when we were pulling together this project, our national mental health pilot program was already in swing, and we were already getting fantastic results through the work that Jo was doing. For SIA, once this safety project was secured and the funding was agreed, it was an obvious choice for us to choose Jo Marshall to lead this project. And Jo has done an amazing job with the National Mental Health Pilot. That has led to, and her work, her collaborative work is something that I just sit in awe of and learn a lot from. And for us, that there are, and Jo will talk more to this, but there are such clear crossovers between mental health and physical safety for us as a culture and as an industry, and the effects of those two together. The projects that we're running are separate, but there was just an instant understanding for SIA, particularly, that Jo was the right person for us to lead this program as well. So we're very happy that Jo agreed to take that on. She's bitten off quite a bit, and we're really pleased with that. And we do look forward to, the other point I wanted to make as well is that this is very much a project that acknowledges all of industry. So wild catch, aquaculture, post-harvest, and anyone else in the supply chain. So that is a message for all of us to make sure that we spread the results, benefits and outcomes of this project very far and wide through our industry. I will stop talking now and hand over to Jo Marshall, who you all know very well, and who's going to walk us through the project, how it's going to look. You'll see those crossovers with the mental health approach, and we'll be open for lots of questions and conversation towards the once Jo's presented. So thank you, Jo. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, V, and good morning, everybody. Thank you so much to so many of you for joining. I will also start by acknowledging that I'm meeting with you all from the land of the Kaurna people. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also their relationship with both land and sea in our area. I often try to just add a little bit of flavour when I do an acknowledgement, and as is valid for this conversation today, only this week I reconnected with a young man called Lockie Cook, who is a young man. He has been adopted by a community in northern Western Australia that have built their lives around fishing, commercial fishing, and he's developed a wonderful wellbeing product called iYarn. That's IYARN, and we're exploring opportunities to use that in either or both of our programs moving forward. So I will launch in and mirror some of what Veronica said, and acknowledge and thank the FRDC and AMSA for continuing in their commitment towards a safer industry. I'm going to mention and thank a number of people on the way through. But before I do that, I want to share this slide with you. I'm assuming all of you can see. Yep, that I've shared this slide in the past, or slides similar to this in the past, for a number of reasons. And I talk to this in this context around, I want to share with you why I want to go home from work safely each night. On the left-hand side is the collection of a very shrinking me with my 4 sons and one of their partners. And there is nothing more important to me than being safe and well to see them at the end of each night. To the right is my wonderful partner, Marty, and my sadly recently moved on to another life puppy, Billy. They're another good reason. And below that, I've put a picture of the Northern Territory commercial fishing gang that I've now met with on a number of occasions. And really, they're the three reasons that I want to be safe at work and go home safe at night. My family is so important to me, but also the fulfillment I get from my work and the example that I'm able to set through my work. Now, that's a pretty unusual way to start a presentation about a project, but it speaks into the heart of the work that I did with SADI, which kind of led me into this industry, which was a safety culture change prior to culture change project. It also speaks into the deep value set that drives all of our behaviours around safety, and a huge focus of the National Safety Project moving forwards is exactly that, is this culture and belief set that says, I'll look at safety through a different lens. I'll look at it through my core beliefs, as opposed to a cost or a compliance activity that I find gets in the way of what I perceive to be my real job. My real job is to stay safe so I can go home to whatever it is. I won't ask people for examples, but I will ask you to just take a moment while I move to the next slide to reflect on what are the 2 or 3 reasons that you want to be safe at work and go home safe at night. Okay, so this is a huge topic. Those of you that know me really well know that I can talk for long periods of time about the things that I'm passionate about, and this is one of them. So I'm just going to give a quick summary of what are we talking about today and what are we not. Firstly, I want to talk to the background of the evolution of the project, and throughout the presentation I'll share more on the transition of existing activities and how we as a collective can seek to use and continue to grow on the great work that's already been done. I'll share with you the purpose and objectives that are shared
down the bottom there. I remember
between our project
hunting
and
for it the other day.
The purpose and objectives that we've agreed to with the FRDC and AMSA in getting the project up and running, the key activities, a summary of the many, many stakeholders that are going to be involved to make this project successful, and as well as our measures of success. Then we'll move on to questions. What's not in store, and of course there's no rules of not being able to bring anything up, but what I haven't planned to discuss in detail are the issues surrounding the National Safety Committee at that sort of broad maritime level, sector-specific issues. I haven't gone down to that detail level, nor have I planned to discuss the various jurisdictional issues that we know make it even more challenging for particularly our commercial fishers. Any interactions welcome. Please put your hand up, give a wave. I know that Jess and Veronica will be watching that closely. And if we can't address it today because we don't have the information or the time, then I commit to you that we will work that back around in the appropriate way. We won't be talking about program branding today, and we won't be talking in any deep way about the very important links to psychological safety. So I'll jump in, and I can't reaffirm enough that this is a program for industry, by industry, and everything that we do relies upon that for the program to be successful. My job is to find the best ways to engage as many people as possible in the conversations about how we can keep ourselves and others safer. A quick snapshot of the evolution of this program. As I looked back through and did my learning, the FRDC have funded so many different activities. They've co-funded a wide range of initiatives, and I know there's a lot of people in this room that have been involved in that. This is an extension of those activities. A couple of standout examples that I think are worth mentioning, and I invite anyone, if I've missed anything major, please jump in. The work of Dr. Tanya King and her team in the Sustainable Fishing Families research has been instrumental across industry in a range of projects, including this one. Dr. Kate Brooks did a fabulous piece, What's Stopping You from Protecting You and Your Mates? Barriers to Adoption of Safe Work Practices. I spoke with Kate yesterday. She sends her apologies, and she remains really passionate and interested in continuing to support the work that we're doing. Jeff Diver, everyone here would know him as well or better than me. His report on how we can utilise electronic platforms to increase safety at sea in the Australian commercial fishing fleet is fantastic. And I really loved on rereading that research now with a couple of years experience under my belt. You know, he was talking about the importance in his recommendations that this needs to be a program that is driven for industry by industry. So it's a term that we've used a lot in Stay Afloat, and it's clearly, you know, we clearly are not the inventors of that in the Stay Afloat program. So of his 14 recommendations, around 5, I think, or 6 were direct recommendations to industry. So we will be taking all of those into account as we develop this program. I'm very, very honoured to have worked with Tanya Adams and Steve Ayres over the past probably 12 plus months, first meeting them through Stay Afloat and now working through deepening my understanding of the work that's been done in CSAFE, CSAFE being the online training modules program that Steve has developed with the support of FRDC and others over recent years, and Tanya's work in FishSafe, which I'll address where those pieces sit in a moment, but certainly Tanya has got a wealth of knowledge around systems, processes, sector level changes to legislation, and she's going to continue to be a very integral part of this program. Given that I've got Steve and Tanya online, I'll just throw to both of you, if you feel like you'd like to make any comment at this point, I invite you to do so.
Shall I just make a couple of quick comments, Jo?
Sure, I'd love you to, Tanya.
Thanks. Yeah, look, I guess just, and I'm sure you're going to fully elaborate on this, but the work that I did was largely trying to build, I guess, a toolkit and resources so that peak bodies could provide that service to their members. So the engagement that you're doing now is just is a wonderful natural progression, because you know you're getting to the grassroots. You're not necessarily relying on the peak bodies to be the linchpin, which is where I sort of was required to focus my efforts. So while you're going to do the things that you're excellent at, all those technical resources and all that sort of thing will continue. You know, they're just about in place. They're pretty much in place, and then they'll just be there for you to use moving forward. So it is really a natural progression from the FishSafe stuff. So yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just quickly jump in and just echo those sentiments. I mean, it's a natural and obvious and welcome progression that you know, CSAFE's been around for a few years now. It obviously needs to progress to the next level, and it needs to be run by you guys. So yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely. I see Steve continuing to be involved. There's a lot of technical work around the transition with the CSAFE training with FRDC, and Tanya will continue to be my my support in terms of the expert knowledge she brings and some of the tools she creates. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, Steve still being involved as an extension officer with the FRDC as well, and I think around the country the extension officers will have differing roles based on location in terms of supporting this program according to their needs and priorities. I also failed at the beginning to introduce a face that's at the centre of my screen. I'm sure everyone else can see her, and that's Sarah Langton. Hopefully many of you met Sarah. She led the charge on my behalf at the Stay Afloat recharge room up at Seafood Directions, and she's come on board to support me in every element of coordinating and driving the project, and to keep me in line with some of my communications and reporting and the you know, the admin side of things, because I'll always choose going to talk to people over sitting at my desk and writing. So Sarah's already done a brilliant job with Stay Afloat, and so please make her welcome if you hear from her. Okay, I will share my screen again and keep moving on, unless there's any questions at this particular moment. Okay, you can see the PowerPoint again now. Steve, your face, can you nod? Can you see it? Yeah, cool. Okay, I just want to quickly reference, as part of that evolution, the National Marine Safety Initiative linkage diagram. So this was something that Tanya developed alongside the SIA committee, the Seafood Industry Safety Initiative, which kind of speaks to where we've come from and where we're going. So there were 4 pillars identified at that point. The first was education and tools, which is the work of SeaSafe that Steve has been doing. The communication piece sat around the work that Tanya and Steve have been doing. The adoption and behaviour pieces have been the area where we haven't quite had that robust plan in place. So we really see that the opportunity now with the National Safety Project is to pull all 4 of those pillars together and ensure, again, that we're respecting the strategic goals of the industry, where we've come from and where we're going. So I'll jump into some facts now. 33% of commercial vessels, and I do apologise for the death by PowerPoint. We wanted to build this presentation so that people could view it and still make some sense of it afterwards. So a third of our commercial domestic vessels at sea are commercial fishing vessels. We know that 50% of the serious and very serious incidents reported are commercial fishing vessels. So our proportion of serious and very serious incidents are higher than our proportion of boats at sea. Between 2016 and 20, there were 26 fatalities. 20 of those were in commercial fishing, and that's just not okay. The fatality rate of commercial fishing is 13.9, so roughly 14 of every 100,000 crew members that go to sea won't come back. That rate in construction is 3.1, in transport and postal and warehousing is 7.8. So that captures many of the tracking accidents and those types of high-risk deaths. So we are really the highest risk and the highest fatality rate, no matter how hard we perceive we're trying at safety at the moment. We also have little or no reporting on minor incidents in our industry. So we only report when there's a serious or tragic episode at sea. And the challenge with that is that it closes off so many avenues for us to learn and shift best practice, so that those minor incidents that could be considered near misses, that could have been fatal or could have been serious injuries, can be prevented. There's also limited oversight at the moment, and when I say limited oversight, I mean at the SIA level or at our industry level. We don't have a method or an agreed method for understanding our post-harvest and aquaculture safety statistics and incidents and that sort of thing. So as Veronica said, they will be part of this project. So the objectives of the National Safety Seafood, how am I going? The Seafood Industry Safety Initiative, or the SISI Committee strategic objectives, underpinned our application or our project plan to the FRDC and AMSA in terms of how we would address those initiatives. So it's important I remind you what they are. Overall, to achieve a positive change in workplace safety culture to ensure that the Australian seafood industry keeps its people safe. And you can see there that I've highlighted or put in bold the workplace safety culture and the keeps its people safe. Ultimately, they're the end game. Now, how we get there isn't just the warm and fuzzy. We want to move towards zero fatalities and a reduction in health and safety incidents within our industry through cultural means. We also want to continually improve and understand our use of workplace health and safety management systems. So whilst we're talking culture, often in traditional circles, we talk about culture and we kind of think that sits separately from systems and processes. It's so not the case. The support of those systems and processes underpins the culture, the attitudes towards them, and very much part of that is helping people understand the why. Why are those systems and processes benefiting us from the prevention end of town? And as I've said to people so many times over my career, one of the challenges with understanding why it's beneficial to use these systems and reporting mechanisms is because we can't measure what didn't happen unless there was actually a near miss. So the true prevention where nothing's happened, we can't see whether something would have happened. So it's really hard to justify for some people. The last objective is the increase in uptake by industry of workplace health and safety training programs and education tools. And we'll move through the various approaches we're taking to those now. The program objectives, I'm not going to read each of these out. You can have a look at them. They're broadly reflective of what you've just looked at. I think the second one there is key because there's a lot of work going into that, and that is we want to demonstrate a shift in sentiment, a shift in values and a shift in behaviours towards safe practices across industry. I'll pause for a moment, let you have a read of that, that slide, and also it's probably a good time to ask if anyone has any questions about those fundamental goals.
So there is a question in the chat around a state-by-state breakdown of those fishing industry incident stats. I'm not sure if you've got those, but
I can get them.
We can take that on notice.
Yep, absolutely. So we can both point you towards the AMSA website where they have a breakdown, and they actually give descriptions of the state and the key elements of most of the serious significant injuries. We know that Queensland carries more than its fair share, but yeah, we can do that, and we will continue to share that throughout the program. Okay, so let's get into what we're actually doing. There's 4 pillars to the program. The first one is our safety communities. We will be developing safety advocates in those safety communities, and we've got a range of tools I'm going to speak to in a moment that they will use to build the culture. We'll have some large focus initiatives. There will be 2 to 3 of those over the course of the program, and they will be kind of industry or sector-wide initiatives to increase and measurably increase the uptake of various behaviours amongst our industry. There's continuous culture building activities, which links closely to both of the prior ones. And there's the piece around technology and innovation, which we won't go into in a lot of detail today. It's still part of our co-design, and probably sits somewhere around the work of the original work of Jeff Diver, and some ideas that we have about making it easier for our industry to get access to technology and innovation if they're not a big player. So our safety communities, we've identified 50 communities, and we've also identified sector by sector. So for those that are really familiar with the Stay Afloat program, one difference that I see we will have in this program is that we will need to be clear, ensuring that we've got different sectors identified as well as different geographies, because the safety needs will have some nuanced and significant differences. We will have an ongoing process of identification and invitation to participate, and we've really seen over now 2 years of the Stay Afloat program, for example, that it begins to snowball as we get critical mass of people who choose to be safety advocates and get involved in the program from a stakeholder perspective. They bring more. So there won't be a cap on involvement. The focus is on peer-to-peer, people who are natural leaders, and also hopefully people who are selected leaders in their sectors and in their geographies, leading one another through what we call the stages of behaviour change. We'll have peer-to-peer community building and a community of practice, and that's what I'm referring to there is that those people who join us as safety advocates, such as Floyd there in the photograph, who's already committed, we will have a community where they are sharing stories, they are sharing experiences. So if somebody has a significant near miss in Rockhampton, there's every likelihood that will find its way to someone in Perth who has a similar type of boat or works in a similar sector. So we see not just the sharing of stories as helpful, but the breadth that we can do that. And we will have regular meetings to improve the knowledge and understanding of that group. I want to touch on the stages of behaviour change, because our safety advocates and the program itself needs to recognise that it can't be a one-size-fits-all. We can't go out, and we'll talk about this with the initiatives, and say to a person, for example, you need to wear a life jacket, here's a free life jacket. There is a place for those types of programs, there's no question about it, but the people who are going to accept and support that free life jacket are people who are probably in the preparation or action stages of behaviour change. People in pre-contemplation don't even perceive that there's a problem or a need to change behaviour. They're the people that say, I've been doing this for 20 years. I haven't been killed yet. So why would I change anything? Of course, I think about safety. The contemplation stage is where I'm starting to think about how people are doing things differently. I'm starting to think that maybe there could be a benefit, but there's probably still some cons at that stage. So in that area, some of the people, if I'm to use the life jacket example, they're the people that are saying, yeah, look, I get that it could help me if I fall overboard, but it just gets in the way when I'm pulling the lines in or when I'm sorting the seafood or whatever it might be. So they're contemplating, they're not right there. Preparation is then when I'm ready. I'm going, okay, I need to make this change. Let me think about how I'm going to do it. Action is, okay, I'm doing it. I've got my life jacket on. Yeah, it's annoying me. It's getting in the way. I'm hot. Maybe I need to go out and buy one that is a different style or a different structure. Maybe I need to revisit the story that other bloke told me on the wharf the other day when he said that I bought this one, it's really good, but it's really expensive. Maybe I need to revisit. There's an example of action. Maintenance is then when it becomes habit, is when I don't even think about walking onto the boat and grabbing that new life jacket that I thought was too expensive at the beginning. You can jump in and out of the stages of behaviour change at any time. So quite often people might be in maintenance and something changes about their work and they find themselves back at that contemplation or preparation stage. So it's a very fluid thing. What we want to do is ensure that our engagement activity throughout the next 4 years of the program addresses each of those stages and also respects each of those stages. So if someone's in pre-contemplation, our goal needs to be to get them thinking, not to get them doing necessarily, because if we alienate them and they refuse to continue to talk to us, we've got nowhere to go. The other key element of our safety communities is going to be a process that we call sense-making. Sense-making as a theory, actually I should start with, sense-making is based upon a model of learning and change called the action learning cycle. So if you look at the picture on the left-hand side, we start with the green downward arrow. We ask people in communities to reflect on things that have happened, such as, has there been a safety incident in your world? How did you feel about it? How did you respond to it? What went well? What didn't go well? We then get them talking to one another and learning. How could we be more successful? How could we be safer? Why didn't that go so well? We then move into planning at an individual or a group level. Okay, what am I going to do differently next time? And then into action. So I'm giving you a lot of theory, but you can see that we've got these stages of behaviour change. The action learning cycle is a tool to get us through, and it's very much used and respected in community settings, in particularly rural and remote settings. Through some of my studies, I've been exposed to people who use this in rural and remote settings where they absolutely acknowledge that building relationships with people in certain communities is difficult if you're coming from the outside, and also that resources are very short in rural and remote settings to have qualified practitioners. So action learning is a peer-to-peer learning methodology. So we're going to use that theory, and how we're going to apply it is using the theory and a technology called sense-making. Sense-making in its simplest form is making sense of experience. So it's that reflection you see over there in the green arrow. What happened? How do I understand it? How has it impacted me? Through collecting that information from people, we're creating stories. We're effectively going to go out to fishers and others in the industry and say, tell us a story about safety. Did something happen? Did something not happen? Did something nearly happen? They will give us permission, not all of them, but hopefully a majority will give us permission to share that narrative and that story. And that narrative and story will then go into our peer-to-peer learning model. So if you can imagine, I was up in Darwin recently and met a couple of fabulous fishermen, and I was talking about this, and one of them, I looked down at his leg and he had a great big band-aid on it. And I said, how'd you do that? And he goes, oh, funny you talk about safety. I'd left this pole that, pardon me, I can't remember what this pole was called, but it has a place. I left it sticking out. I walked into it and I've lost half a day of work today because I had to go and get 7 stitches in it. He told another guy, and I said, here's the example. You've just told your mate not to leave the pole sticking out. In a sense-making world, we can create the story of that. And it's a simple reminder for everyone else in industry from a peer to say, don't leave the pole sticking out on your boat because you might end up with stitches and you'll lose half a day of work. That's much more powerful than me going out and saying, hey, your pole's sticking out, I'm a safety expert, you could have an accident there. So through Sensemaking, we create story and we also create scale. And those stories will speak to each of the stages of behaviour change and find their way out in a sometimes not terribly organised, but sometimes very organised fashion through the work that we're doing. We will have an ever-growing database of stories that we can share in their raw form, that we can also create short videos and education and use them in the SeaSafe education modules and things like that. The other great thing about Sensemaking is it's a world-leading, recognised qualitative research analytics tool. So it's all going into the big computer machine, which has the algorithms and uses AI to help us take the raw form of these stories, not interfered with by us in the exact words of our industry colleagues, and tell us what the sentiment is, what are the common themes that people are experiencing across industry. And over the life of the program, we'll be able to see and measure the shift in people's attitudes and behaviours around safety. And we'll touch back on that in the measures. Very quickly, our focus initiatives, open floor for people to put in chat or get in touch with us later. Things we've tossed around are personal EPIRBs. There's some innovative man overboard tools out there that Steve and Tanya made me aware of. Wireless access for small boating operators could be one. There could be some activities around psychological safety and the way that a psychologically safe workplace lowers the risk of injury. There could be incentives to participate in training. We don't know. As we move into the stakeholder conversation shortly, you'll see that all of these decisions are reliant on the broad involved stakeholder group that will be invited to be part of the project. So let's talk about our key stakeholders. I've put the picture of the bees there and said that this is really a project that's trying to create an ecosystem of safety. It needs everybody. It's not just training, it's not just communication, it's not just peak bodies, it's not just grassroots, it's all of us. And we need to design an ecosystem that will sustain beyond the next 4 years. So of course, if I talk about, if I try to categorise it down, FRDC and AMSA are the joint funders of the project, so they are incredibly important. We will be appointing a steering committee. The steering committee will be represented from every state, and we will, to the best of our ability, get representation across a range of sectors and a range of stages in the supply chain. So that will mean wild catch, aquaculture, post-harvest and beyond. We want those people to be, if not people that are currently at the grassroots, people who have spent significant time at the grassroots and remain involved, so that we're getting that real live experience of the end user helping us to make decisions. Industry peak bodies, of course, are absolutely key to everything we do in this industry. We will maintain our strong links with WISA and other state and sector member organisations as we continue to do and aim to strengthen now. We will remain as close as we can to other regulators, so AFMA, state safe work bodies and the National Safety Committee, to both share what we're doing, but importantly understand the trends. There's some amazing work being done by the state safe work bodies, so even where they're not as relevant to some sections of our industry, that's where a lot of the leading learning comes from. Our safety advocates, by the way, this is not necessarily in order beyond the number one, which is our funders. Safety advocates are going to be an enormous part of the program, and we will be running formal evaluation of this program throughout. So what's ahead? Very quickly. This year, not much of it left. We're continuing, we have a project plan. We're continuing to refine that. We're working with our early adopters. We already have 5 people who've put their hand up to be safety advocates. Tanya and I are also working through the safety champions that she established. We have been working on a transition plan together to ensure, and we will continue to work closely to ensure that the Fish Safe program and others are integrated well into the work we're doing. We'll appoint evaluators, establish the steering committee, establish what I call a working rhythm. So you see that big list of stakeholders. What are we going to talk about? When are we going to talk about it? How often are we going to be in touch? So we want to create a routine where people can expect certain communications and certain touch points with us. Of course, anyone can contact us at any time, but for the sake of, you know, high productivity and efficiency, we will create a working rhythm that people can ask us, how often do you speak to this group or that group, and so on. And of course, a comms plan and a calendar. We do expect to have all of the same wonderful, you know, web presence and social media presence of our other programs. Next year, we'll continue to grow. We really start to promote the FRDC, reviewing the technicalities and place that the training modules sit. So once that's resolved, we'll probably do some stronger promotion on the training tools and start to develop some alternatives. I already have, for example, a sector from the abalone market, or the abalone sector in New South Wales, have come up with some really interesting ideas about training modules that could be developed that are cross-sector, so bringing closer together the safety activities of other seafarers that are not fishers in that local area. We'll launch the Sensemaking program. There'll be a short pilot, and then we'll roll that out fully. We'll launch our first industry initiative, and we'll have our first evaluation point. Beyond that, it's a project, as you would imagine. Probably the key thing that we will need to be focusing on 24 and beyond is, what have we learned, how are we shifting, and how are we going to ensure that the industry has the appropriate funding and sustainable activities in place, so that this project becomes the ecosystem that I talk about, and not a project that has an end date. I said that we wouldn't be touching on mental health, but I did share this at the first meeting I ever went to with SIA and FRDC and others. And just a reminder that whilst these two programs need a lot of energy, a lot of separate energy, this strong link between mental health state and accidents is ever present. So we will talk psychological safety in this project, and we will touch on it in Stay Afloat, because as employers, we actually have a responsibility to provide not just a physically safe environment, but a psychologically safe environment. And in that environment, we hope to play every part that we can in reducing frustration, fatigue, rushing and complacency, because they are the four most common mindsets that people report that they were in just before they injure themselves. So the link is inextricable. It's important that we go forward knowing that link and finding the right balance between sharing stories and sharing those causal factors through our peer-to-peer system, so that we can keep people safer into the future. So that is, I think that's me, and I'm very, very happy to take questions, comments, anything. Everyone's overwhelmed by the amount of information they're trying to digest.
Just in the chat, Joe, I was asking what platforms you're using for incident reporting. Have you got that? Is that mature?
No, not mature at all, David. So the Sensemaking tool will collect the narrative. We need to figure out the right way to approach it. So I know when I was in Perth and I chatted with you and Ollie, I'm particularly interested in working with iAuditor down the track, but it needs to come into the project at the right time, that people are willing to use it. And I want to, I guess, investigate and understand the expectations of AMSA, because there's a lot of fear out there from fishers who will say, I'm happy to talk about it, happy to let you know, but I'm not going to, because AMSA will come and crack down on me and take away my license. So we need, you know, as part of this to navigate, you know, if we start collecting stats, can we de-identify them? You know, what are our options going to be to protect our fishers so that they don't feel let down by the program that's trying to help them get better and more transparent in their reporting?
That's that culture. So near miss is a gift, and till people change that whole thinking around, oh my God, I'm telling the world I stuffed up. I mean, that's a really fundamental kind of mindset piece.
Yeah.
Then, you know, if we're going to be successful in getting near miss reporting up to anything like what it should be, then part of what we do between the ears of folks at sea is to rewire that bit.
And, you know, I mean, AMSA is certainly, I don't think we've got anyone from AMSA online today. My normal contacts are all on leave at the moment. But, you know, their intent is very strong around supporting positive reporting and not implementing immediate big stick, you know, responses. So we want to work closely with them. And I guess that's one of the reasons I like the Sensemaker tool, because it is quite separate from formal reporting. So people will share a story, and that information remains within the project, and it gets them kind of, you know, doing it in a perceived safer environment than going onto the AMSA website and putting in an incident report. So I think iAuditor could be a middle ground.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way we've viewed it, and it's. I won't pretend it's easy, and I won't pretend we're there. But as a platform for collecting, so the routine conduct of drills and inductions, and for near miss reporting, it's been working okay, and we've been through a couple of iterations of this. So some of the early work was, we just picked the wrong platform. So that's kind of there, and it's useful that you know about it.
Yeah. Health and safety systems can be a nightmare. I've worked with some that, you know, companies have invested, you know, gazillions into, only for them to have given us a, you know, bit of a sour lemon that becomes an administrative nightmare. I've had limited experience with iAuditor. For those who are not familiar with it, iAuditor is a really flexible, user-driven tool where you could be quite formal in putting your templates for risk assessment, management and reporting onto iAuditor, and have a very strong compliance focus on it. I see that it's got the potential for us to start gently and, you know, design things the way that work for our industry. Again, that will all be, and I thank David and Oliver and his team at Austral for making available a tour and loads of information about how they're using it at the moment. And moving forwards, we'll be hoping others will do the same, and the steering committee will be integral in helping us understand how we do it and make it easy for them. Carolyn.
Hi, Joe. Excellent presentation as always, and it looks really good. So thank you. I'll keep it brief. Just with the story sharing, so people will share their story, but the key from my reading of Sensemaker here is to have a follow-up, whether it's workshop or whatever, with industry, those who've shared their stories, to allow them to actually analyse the data to make sense of those stories themselves. And then you'd probably need somebody, yourself or others, who are professional in that space, not to lead, but help analyse. Is there scope for follow-up workshops? People are going to be anonymous, sometimes sharing stories. So how do you bring people together to unpack those stories to make sense, like industry, to make sense of it for themselves, but still have a professional person there too, because some of the software is a bit tricky, as you know. It's not hard, but it can be a bit tricky. And they might see things that others don't. Can you just give us a very, very brief overview of that? Very brief. Thank you.
Sure. And I'd have to say in my summary of Sensemaker, I did fail to acknowledge that Sensemaker has been piloted in the work that Tanya Adams has done previously. So Tanya's been very close to it, as has Carolyn. And there was some specific challenges noted around that, which we won't go into today. Carolyn, to answer your question, Tanya will remain a part of that conversation. And only this morning, Sarah and I met with the Sensemaker team to figure out, to begin figuring out exactly those processes. So in the first instance, it'll be very textbook. We will have workshops. We'll definitely collaborate with WISER. And we think there might be some people linked to WISER that have got some of that facilitation and social science knowledge that would be integral to this. We've also got another person who led the project from a complex behaviour and change process. So we will be designing ways to do that, some of which will be remote and some won't. But we're also kind of unabashedly saying that we might test the envelope on workshops versus a more remote and fluid methodology for that sense making and storytelling and sharing. So from a research quality perspective, that analysis needs to be designed and won't be textbook in the long term, I don't think. It'll certainly be textbook in the pilot stages.
Wonderful. No, thank you, Jo. Thank you.
So probably, oh, Steve.
Yeah, just on the story side of things. So Tanya will be aware of this as well. In fact, she might have been the one that alerted me to it. So we know that there are fatalities that occur that don't get recorded, you know, in the fishing statistics. They might get recorded elsewhere. They might be people falling off boats when they're on the slipway, for example. We certainly don't hear of those accidents. So I don't know what we do about it. I think it might, this is an issue that's probably bigger than this project, but I think it's, given we've got a large audience interested in safety, I figured it timely to flag the fact that we actually don't have a good handle on all the fatalities that are related to the fishing industry. And if we don't have that, we can't learn from them. Yeah. And so that's an issue we need to think about.
I would agree with everything you said, Steve, but perhaps question whether this this project in and of itself as a plan on paper isn't big enough, but the entire goal and I guess one of the things that I'm passionate about is that we involve every corner of our industry in this and we solve that together, because I think it can't sit outside of this work. It is about the engagement and getting the commitment and support from people. But it's a stepped process, and that's why I talk about the stages of change. There will be people out there who are absolutely opposed to sharing a story, and then there'll be others that say, actually, we reported a death and AMSA were really supportive of us, and it was a good thing that we did that. So we need to shift this, you know, move people along that spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, but just to be clear, so even AMSA won't have those figures either. Correct. Because they don't get recorded. They don't get shared with
Absolutely.
AMSA.
Yeah. I'll probably wrap up, and I'm happy to take questions with the time that's left. But for those that are looking to exit and get the extra 10 minutes back in their day, I would love for every single person on this webinar to flick me a one-line email after this and say, count me in. And it can be in a smaller or larger way. I've only given you a very brief snapshot of the different roles and stakeholder engagement. We've got terms of reference drafted for the steering committee, for the safety advocates roles, etc., etc. So, you know, at this stage, I'm just looking to build our community and for us to work out together what everybody's role is. So, you know, those of you that are sitting with your double screens, just open up an email and send joe@seafoodindustryaustralia.com.au a little email that says, I'm in. Tanya.
So I guess I'd like to say, obviously I'm in, and I'll support whatever, but the struggles that I've had, we obviously have regular discussions and everything else, and we can build all the tools and we can build all the mechanisms, and yes, we've got I've got the technical resources, which is not part of your remit because it's already been done or being finished off, whatever. The most important part is that engagement process, which is what you're the expert at, and you know, and coming from SIA is where it should be sitting, not some person outside of the state or whatever. So I think it's, from everybody on the call, it's really important to say my experience, and I've been involved with the industry for a long time, that engagement and the confidence of even going down to those incidents, Steve, that we know about, that we found out about, that weren't ever reported, but we found out about it. So we want actually people to tell us that before we find out via the grapevine. And if you build that culture and that positivity, then we've got at least more of a fighting chance than what we've got at the moment. So I think the work that this project's going to do, and this project is so critical to achieving that change, because once you achieve that mindset change, everything else will flow on. So I congratulate SIA, and I look forward to supporting wherever I can in the future. I think it's a great initiative, and yeah, good luck.
It's very humbling comment, Tanya. It's been, you know, it will be wonderful to continue to work with you. It just reminded me, I use a term sometimes in my work called the myth of retribution. People don't do things, don't tell the truth, and I'm talking about in a workplace sense as well as this broader reporting sense, because they fear a retribution that may actually not even be there. The number of people I've worked with just in teams in leadership that say, well, I didn't tell anyone that because I didn't want to get in trouble. And you say, what evidence was there that you were going to get into trouble? And they can't find any. So part of what I think we need to work very closely with AMSA with is making sure we understand what the consequences of reporting are going to be where things have gone wrong. Oh, and thank you, Angela. I know Angela joined early. Steve's just put a post up to re-acknowledge and congratulate Angela for her filming Fishes entry. So, Angela, I know you're on my list to touch base with as well. V.
Well, I was just going to say we can wrap it up. It's my, I always like to give a gift back to everybody now when we're also time constrained. So this is a 6-minute gift back to everybody from SIA. So I think it's, if there aren't any more questions, Jess has put your details in the chat. The entire team is open to contact if you need to, but Joe's team are well across this, and you've obviously got Tanya and Steve and Carolyn as well. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you taking some time to come to the webinar today and to learn more. We're so looking forward to receiving your I'm in emails. And even if you're not, we'll come back and find you. We've got all your names and numbers now, so don't worry. But thank you everyone for your time, and we look forward to catching up with you, and we look forward to rolling this project out. Oh, Joe's taking a photo.
Yeah, can you just give me a wave? A thumbs up. Thank you very much. Thumbs up. Pretend it's my cutout. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Veronica. See you later.
See you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, we've lost Tanya.